Hey, what's up, everyone? It's Jordy here, and today we're at day 3 of the 30-day video challenge. And what we're going to do today is a simple mix breakdown of the song that I recently released called "Take Me Away." I'm going to try to explain some concepts to you. I'm going to try to give you some mixing tips here and there, but I'm going to try to keep it as simple as I possibly can, while I am also going to explain you one thing that I feel like every recording artist should know, I guess, and I want to be able to give you guys information that is useful. So some things might seem a little hard at first, but if you learn these concepts and if you know how to apply them, then they'll start to make sense. So I'll try to keep it as simple as I can, but I can't promise that there are things that you might not understand. However, if that's the case, don't be afraid to leave a comment down below, and I'll be happy to explain a little bit more. And yeah, if there are very many requests, if there are very many requests about a certain topic, that might be a sign that I have to make a video about it. Anyway, let's go on to my screen, shall we? So I'm going to switch over to my DAW right now. As you can see here, we're at my DAW, and I have highlighted a portion of the first verse, and I'm just going to play that to you right now, the vocal as it is with everything on it. And one disclaimer that I'll say is that I have disabled the master effects. So I have disabled the limiter on the master, I have disabled the EQ on the master, and the compressor on the master, just to try to keep it as simple as possible. So just so you know.
Here stops my journey, don't worry, I'm at peace, release my last words. While life hurts, gets worse daily, Corona drops me, here stops my journey.
Okay, so that is a portion of the vocal with the music. Now I'll play you a portion of the same thing, but without the beat. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to disable the beat, which is right here. Whoops, yeah, there we go.
Here stops my journey, don't worry, I'm at peace, release my last words. While life hurts, gets worse daily, Corona drops.
Now, that sounds pretty good, right? Now, what would happen if I would take the effects away from what I put on the vocal and then play the same thing? Now, don't listen to just the volume. Like, try to listen to how it sounds.
Here stops my journey.
Oh, well, you know what? That's a little bit unfair. Let's just disable the beat first, and then let's play it.
Here stops my journey, don't worry, I'm at peace, release my last words. While life hurts, gets worse.
Now, if you listen closely, I'll put it back to how it was. One moment. Now, if you listen closely, you'll hear that the vocal sounds a lot more tiny, and it sounds, there are a bit of a problematic frequencies in the top end as well as in the middle. So the concept that I want to explain to you is buzzing. And what that means is that this vocal, which is, let me click on it, this track is being routed to a bus that I called vocal effects. What happens is that all my vocal tracks get sent to this bus, so they all roughly get the same treatment. So they all get the same EQ, they all get the same compression, and anything else that I put onto it. The first reason why you might want to work with busing is that it saves CPU power, because there's only one instance of an EQ and one instance of a compressor and one instance of everything that you put on there. instead of multiple instances of the same thing. So that would be a lot easier on your CPU. So that's the first benefit. But the most common reason why I know people do this is because it also saves a lot of time, because when you have recorded a song, for instance, and you're in front of the mic and you're recording your song, then that roughly sounds the same every time. I'm just assuming that you know all your lyrics and that you're singing it piece by piece, so you're not moving away from the microphone back to your computer and back again. I'm assuming that you're just in front of the microphone the same distance every time, and and of course your vocal is your vocal, so it always the treatment for the vocal is roughly the same every time. Now, of course, there are differences as to when you're further away from the mic or you're closer to the microphone. So what I'm trying to explain is that sometimes you have that say you're further away from the mic, so this is further, and then this is closer. Of course, that is gonna give you a different frequency response. So what that means is that basically gives you different curves in your frequencies, and then it will slightly differ from time to time. But what I'm trying to say is your vocal is your vocal, so there's always kind of a starting point. Now that means that here I started with a compressor to bring the overall volume of the vocal up a bit and try to squash down the peaks and make it a bit more even. That's mostly what a compressor is used for. Then you have an EQ. I think most of you are familiar with that. Now there are different EQs, but I use FabFilter Q3 because it's a really good plugin because it has dynamic EQing as well. I'm not going to get into that, and it's really intuitive, and you can add as many bands as you please, and you can also solo frequencies, so you can hear better what you're doing. Then I added another EQ. Why I did that, I'll get back to that in a second. You got the Isotope Deep Breath plugin. What that does, basically, it removes the breaths from your vocal tape, and I want my vocals as clean as possible, so I also want to get rid of the breaths that I take in between. And the last plugin is a plugin called Vocal Writer from Waves. The simplest way to explain it is that what Vocal Writer can do for you is instead of automating your volume of your vocal to, like, say you have EQ'd it and compressed it, but parts are still too loud and other parts are still too quiet, then you can use something like Vocal Writer to help you do that. What you do is you select a range from how far it can go up and how far it can go down. And once you set a threshold here, then it knows, okay, I need to deduct by so much. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but that is in a nutshell what it does. It basically does the automation of leveling out your vocals a bit more automatically if you set it up correctly. So that is why I had it there, because I just wanted to get the song out quickly to you guys, and when I want something done quickly and roughly, I'll just use the Vocal Writer. And now I just want to get quickly into why I use two compressors. In this case, I used two compressors. So the first one was to bring up the volume, and the second one was to basically add a little bit more compressed sound to the vocal. If you take one more look at this one, you'll see that this one is set pretty heavy, and this one is it is compressing but not super heavy. Now the reason this one is actually, no, it's not too heavy, but sometimes I also do like two heavy compressors. But what most people do is they have a compressor and then in the chain they have another compressor. The reason why they do that is that they first usually compress to bring up the volume, like I did with the first one, and that second compressor that is going to add a little bit more taste to the vocal, and it's going to squash down the peaks a little more, and it's then going to balance out the vocal a bit more. Though how much you add on the second compressor kind of determines how it's going to sound for a huge part, because if you put the threshold down very far and you compress really heavily, you'll get a really compressed sound, and sometimes that is what you want, so then definitely do it. But if you just want to round off the vocal a bit more first, just try to do it with this technique that you use two compressors. The reason is, if you use two compressors to compress the vocal, then it will, then two compressors work a little bit. Whereas if you would use only one compressor, that smacks down on these peaks, and it will balance out the vocal, but you will have you'll also get a very compressed sound. So that is the reason why I always say, try to use two compressors. And if you don't want to, then that's fine too. You can also use one compressor, but then keep in mind that you have to do a lot of vocal automation probably, because then it's a little bit less, then there's still room for peaks going up and down, and then you have to manually do that. But, for every song it's different, so just experiment, and then I assume that you'll all be fine. One other thing that I want to show you is this next thing, and it's called vocal warmth. That is what I call it. So this plugin that you see right here is called FabFilter Saturn, and I'm using this to add more warmth to the vocal. Now, do you remember that I said that the vocal sounds a bit tiny? So it sounds a little, tiny and narrow, and you can hear that there were inconsistencies in the upper range. I wanted a bit more body to the vocal, and I did that by adding some warm tape, and also by cutting off most of the highs actually a part of the highs of this plugin instance, so that it will mostly boost the down harmonics instead of the upper harmonics, because that is also the reason why we use bussing, to have more control over the plugins that we put on our vocal or on our guitar or whatever. That way you can then shape the sound with an EQ, whereas if you would put it directly onto the vocal, there's less control there. So that is why we usually just route everything to certain places instead of putting it on the vocal track itself. So I just want to solo that and show you what it does. I'll switch back to my screen. So now I am just going to play it without the vocal warmth first, and then with.
I'm at peace, release my last words. While life hurts, gets worse daily. Corona drops me, here stops my journey.
Did you hear that? Did you hear that slight difference where it sounds a little less tiny and that it has a little more body once you add it? I'm also gonna solo it for you, so you can. I hope it comes across on. Or you know what? I'll boost it like very much just to show you what it exactly is doing.
I'm at peace, release my last words. While life hurts, gets worse.
So as you can hear, what that does, it's really boosting the lower region of the vocal, and that if you add it a little bit, then that will create a little bit more warmth to your vocal. At least that is what I call it. So definitely try to experiment with that. Try to find a tape plugin, or try to use an exciter that can also help, and then only boost the down harmonics or the upper harmonics, of course, whatever you prefer. But that is the reason why that is there. And the last concept, or actually this is not the last concept, one other concept that I want to show you is the vocal doubler. Let me just show you. This plugin is called the Vocal Doubler by Isotope. It's a free plugin that you can download from their website and you can use it. And actually, the name already suggests what it does. It's basically doubling your vocal, and how much that is and how wide it sounds, you can manipulate that by using this plugin. I'll not go into depth how this works right now, but let me just play you a section with the. First, I'm going to play it without it, and then I'm going to instigate it after.
Here stops my journey. Don't worry, I'm at peace. Release my last words. While life hurts, gets worse daily. Corona drops me. Here stops my journey. Don't worry, I'm at peace. Release my last words. While life hurts.
What this does, it is ever so slightly, but what it does, it creates a little more width to the vocals, and also by adding this, it doesn't fight as much with the beat as if I would turn it off. Yeah, as I said, I hope it comes across on YouTube because it's a very minor difference. What I can show you is how it will sound when you solo it, and you can see, or actually just hear what it does.
Here stops my journey. Don't worry, I'm at peace. Release my last words. While life hurts.
I'm gonna try and explain to you what the vocal doubler does in the most simplest ways. Basically, you have a vocal, and what the vocal doubler does, it's creating multiple instances of that vocal, and it slightly delays them ever so much so that you'll get a wider sound. It is almost as if, as if like I'm talking now, and then you would move my vocal ever so slightly, and then by doing that, it creates a wider sound, because then it sounds like, instead of your vocal being in the middle like this, then it will sound a little spread out. And how much that is, that's up to you. You can make a vocal that sounds like this, but you can also make one that sounds super big. So that is up to you, and that is actually, like, using vocal doublers is good, but just be careful that you don't overdo it, because if you overdo it and you edit too much, it will sound too affected, and then it'll lose your vocal will sound it will sound washed out, and it won't sound as good. So just be careful with using this, and actually these kind of plugins are the best use if you use buzzing, as I discussed earlier. You can put it on your main vocal if you please, though if you want that, make sure that, and that goes for any plugin by the way, if you want to work with putting everything on your main vocal, I'll show you that too real quick. Let's go to the doubler. If you put it on your main vocal, there is usually a mount knob, and then you can just blend the effect in like this. Then you can use this knob to say how much you want of. Or you can search within your DAW. In my DAW, you can also do this. Just look for a mount knob or whatever, and then you can add it on the main vocal track if you want to do it that way. But again, and this is the last time I'll say it, the sooner you learn buzzing, the faster and the more cleaner your vocal or your whatever instrument you have will sound. Because you can also take this a step further. I'm not going to do it, but what you can do is you can go to the doubler, and then you can, I don't know, add an EQ, and then you can make sure that the doubler only affects certain areas of the vocal. So you can get as creative as you want. The last technique that I want to show today is actually one that contradicts what I just said, but I'll explain it to you. Now, for this demonstration, we need to go to the chorus, which is right here. So right here on the screen, you see that I have a lot of vocal takes in that area, which I just showed you. So the technique that we use here, and I call it vocal stacking. What that means is that you have two versions of me singing the chorus in the middle, so like this, and then we pan two instances of that to the right and two instances of that to the left. And what that does, it will create space. Not the same way that a vocal doubler does, but these are really authentic new takes that you place in that you placed in a different spot in the stereo field, and that creates a more, to me, it creates a more authentic way, a more authentic sound of space, because these are really like new takes. So let me just demonstrate what I mean. So let's play the chorus now, and let's first play it with all the takes initiated.
This is the last song I write. Move towards the light. Candle almost burnt up. Finally in luck.
Now watch what happens when I take every take of the chorus away except for the two middle pieces.
This is the last song I write. Move towards the light. Candle almost burnt up. Finally in luck.
Now then it sounds much more tiny, right? Then it sounds less spacious, and it sounds a bit like as if it's only in the center. And I am a person that really likes dramatic choruses most of the time, or dramatic, not so much dramatic. It's more not so much dramatic choruses. It's more like I like to give my choruses a bit of depth, you know, and I want you, when you hear the chorus, you're like, oh, okay, we're in the chorus. And I want to make it sound big and faux, and that is a trick that I use to actually do that. One thing that I want to mention though, if you want to use this vocal stacking technique, so like two instances of the chorus on each side of the spectrum, you can do that, but just know that if you use panning, you have to make sure that all these takes are lined up correctly. If not, it will sound weird and it will sound washed out. So that is a lot of work if you want to do it manually. I heard that there are plugins, by the way, that can align the vocals for you. I have to test that. I have never used that before. But just know if you use that you have to make sure that they are well aligned, because otherwise it will sound washed out and it won't sound good. That's actually the last concept that I want to share today. Of course, there are more ways to make your vocals sound spacious. One of the things that are commonly used are reverb and delay. But because these are complex plugins and there are complex concepts that I typically use with delay and reverb, I don't want to get into them in this video. Maybe in a different video of the 30-day video challenge. If you guys have any questions about what I just mentioned, or if you have concerns, or if you feel like I explained something wrong, definitely feel free to leave your comment down below and correct me if you think I did something wrong or I explained something wrong. Let me just say it that way. And if you have suggestions, or if you want to know something about mixing or recording or whatever, or if you have a suggestion for a video at all, let me know, drop a comment below, and then I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye bye.